Before we begin, drop a comment below with your country and what time it is right now where you're watching. Whether it's sunrise in Nairobi, midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to know. Don't just sit back, tell me where in the world you are. Now let's dive into the story. Astrid Emberlin stood trembling in the marble center of the royal court, her bare feet numb against the cold stone as hundreds of eyes pierced into her like sharpened arrows. The golden banners of the Arctellan dynasty swayed above her, but she felt no warmth from them, only judgment. She had been dragged here at dawn, wrists bound, accused of being a wolf-blood without a wolf. A disgrace, a defect, a curse. Magistrate Lurden Crestfall's voice echoed across the grand chamber, booming with cruel authority as he announced her final humiliation. Shift, girl. If you truly claim the blood of our kind, prove it now before the crown. A murmur rippled through the nobles. Some sneered, some pitied. Most anticipated her failure like entertainment. Astrid's heart pounded painfully, her throat raw from silent screams. She had never shifted. Not once. Not even in private. And now, surrounded by royalty, soldiers, and enemies, she felt smaller than a shadow, powerless as dust beneath their boots. Her breath hitched as the silence thickened, pressing against her ribs like a closing fist. Astrid stared at her shaking hands, wishing they would glow, burn, or crack open with some sign of power. Anything to save her from the humiliation stretching before her. Riven Arctellan, the prince himself, watched from the throne's shadowed dais, his expression unreadable beneath the silver crown resting against his dark hair. She felt his gaze like a blade tracing her skin, not cruel, but impossibly sharp. Elira Snowmantle, her only friend, stood hidden among the attendants, eyes wide with fear, silently pleading for Astrid to run, to scream, to fight. But Astrid could do none of those things. Her body felt locked, her blood cold, her wolf, if it even existed, silent as a buried grave. Magistrate Crestfall stepped closer, boots echoing like hammer strikes. Shift, he repeated slower, each syllable dripping with disdain. Or accept your fate as a fraud to this kingdom. Laughter flickered through the crowd, rising like sparks in dry grass. Astrid swallowed hard as heat stung her eyes. Shame burned deeper than any wound. And yet, beneath it, something else trembled. Anger, ancient and unfamiliar. It stirred softly, waiting to be awakened within. Astrid clenched her jaw as that strange heat coiled deeper, curling through her chest like a spark searching for oxygen. She didn't understand it. It felt alien, yet oddly familiar, like a memory she had never lived but had always carried. The court's torches flickered violently, bending as if pulled toward her, though no one seemed to notice. Queen Marianne Arctellan lifted her chin from the dais, her emerald eyes narrowing with a gaze sharp enough to split stone. The girl trembles, she said softly, but her voice carried through the hall with chilling precision, prompting murmurs among the nobles. Carrick Dunashade smirked from the front row, arms crossed as he whispered loudly enough for half the chamber to hear. Of course she trembles. You can't awaken what was never there. The crowd snickered. Astrid's stomach twisted. Shame rose like a tide threatening to choke her, yet that flicker of anger refused to die. It tightened inside her, a pulse of heat that made her fingertips tingle. She lifted her chin, not high, but enough for Crestfall's expression to twitch with irritation. For the first time she wondered if weakness was not her truth, but the story others forced upon her since childhood. Magistrate Crestfall took another step toward her, the heavy fabric of his crimson robes dragging across the stone like a warning hiss. Very well, he said, voice turning colder, deadlier. If you refuse to shift, the court will declare you human-born, a stain among us. You will be exiled by sundown. A ripple of shock swept through the hall. Exile, a fate worse than punishment. Exile meant isolation, starvation, death by the hands of rogues who hunted the weak. Astray's breath wavered, but her spine stiffened as that heat inside her surged again, pounding against her ribs like a trapped heartbeat. Elira's hand pressed to her mouth, eyes filling with panic. Riven leaned forward slightly on his throne, the faintest crease appearing between his brows. Astray felt all of it, every stare, every whisper, every doubt, swarming around her like vultures waiting for her collapse. The marble beneath her feet vibrated faintly, though she wasn't sure if it was real or just the roar of her own pulse. She swallowed the rising fear, tasted iron, and closed her eyes for a single breath. She wished for strength. She wished for truth. She wished for something, anything, to answer that burning spark clawing inside her. The moment she opened her eyes, the world shifted. A sound, low, resonant, ancient, rumbled in her chest like thunder rolling beneath skin. Torch flames bent toward her again, this time unmistakably, drawing startled gasps from the nobles. Astray's knees buckled, but she stayed upright as white-hot fire streaked through her veins, burning away fear, shame, and the suffocating belief that she was powerless. Her vision sharpened, colors deepened, sense burst into clarity. She smelled the fear in the room. She tasted it. Crestfall stumbled back a single step, confusion breaking his icy mask. The marble beneath Astray's feet cracked like frost under pressure. A roar, her roar, tore from her throat, shaking dust from the rafters. The court erupted in chaos, nobles scrambling, guards raising weapons, the queen rising to her feet with a sharp inhale. And as Astray's bones twisted and her skin rippled with moonlit silver, Riven stood from his throne slowly, eyes wide with something that looked dangerously close to reverence. Astray didn't understand how it was happening, or why it waited until this moment, but she felt her wolf erupt through her, powerful and unstoppable. And for the first time in her life, the royal court bowed. Dawn's cold light crept across the stone courtyard as Astray lay in the healer's chamber, her body aching from the impossible shift that had torn through her only hours before. She woke slowly, breath catching at the memory of the royal court bowing to her, the girl they had mocked as powerless. But the moment she tried to sit up, a sharp ache pulled through her ribs, reminding her that transformation came with a price. Healer Orvin Ketlow hovered nearby, grinding herbs with trembling hands, glancing at her as though she were a creature carved from lightning. "Easy," he murmured, though the words shook. "Your bones, they were not ready. No one shifts for the first time at your age, let alone before the entire kingdom." Astray clenched her jaw, her mind spinning. She remembered Crestfall stumbling. She remembered the queen rising in shock. She remembered Riven's eyes locked on her, glowing with something strange and unreadable. And beneath all of that, she felt an old ache rising. The ache of questions she had been forced to bury. Why had her wolf been silent for 18 years? Why awaken now? And what truth had her mother, Seren Draycliffe, taken to the grave? The chamber door creaked open before Astray could steady her breath, and Elira Snowmantle slipped inside, face pale from sleepless terror. She rushed to Astray's bedside, grasping her hand with cold fingers. "You scared the life out of me," Elira whispered, voice cracking as she searched Astray's eyes for answers Astray didn't have. One moment they were calling you a fraud, and the next, "Astray, you shattered stone." Astray swallowed hard, shame and pride warring quietly in her chest. "I didn't know," she whispered back. "Elira, I didn't even feel her until the moment they threatened exile." Elira shook her head, glancing toward the hallway as though expecting soldiers to burst in at any second. "The court isn't done with you. Crestfall is furious. Queen Marianne is demanding explanations. And the prince, well, he hasn't left the training grounds since dawn." Astray blinked, confusion rising. Why would Riven care? Elira hesitated, chewing her lip. Because he stepped down from the dais when you shifted. He wasn't afraid. Astray's heart thumped uncomfortably. She didn't want to think about Riven's eyes on her, bright with something that felt too close to recognition, or destiny, or danger. Maybe all three. Maybe worse. Before Astray could respond, the chamber torches flickered, bending toward the doorway as a tall shadow filled it. General Silas Brantmore stepped, inside, armor gleaming like carved steel, his expression carved even harder. His presence alone made the room shrink. "The Queen requests your presence," he said, voice deep and unyielding. Astray stiffened, pulse spiking. Elira moved instinctively in front of her, but Silas's stern gaze silenced any protest. "Now," he added, softer but no less commanding. Astray pushed herself upright, ignoring the sharp pull in her ribs. She would not limp in front of the Queen. She would not appear small. As she steadied herself, the torches bent again, subtle but unmistakable, toward her. Silas noticed. His jaw tightened. "The court is unsettled," he said, choosing the word with care. "A first shift of that magnitude hasn't been witnessed in decades." Astray swallowed. "Is the Queen angry?" Silas paused, not a hesitation, but a calculation. "Curious," he said at last. "And curiosity from Queen Marianne can be more dangerous than wrath." Elira squeezed Astray's hand one last time as Silas motioned her forward. Astray stepped into the corridor, heart thundering, aware that each step carried her closer to answers, or execution. The palace corridors stretched endlessly, their high archways carved with ancient runes that glowed faintly as Astray passed beneath them, as if recognizing something in her blood. Servants froze mid-step when they saw her, whispering behind trembling hands. Some bowed hesitantly. Others watched with wide, frightened eyes, unsure whether she was miracle or monster. Astray kept her gaze forward, following Silas's heavy footsteps as they echoed through the hall like a countdown. Every sound felt amplified, the rustle of banners, the crackle of torches, even her own breath. She had walked these corridors before as a servant girl delivered to the palace after her mother's death, unnoticed and unimportant. Now the air itself seemed to shift around her, reacting to her presence. They approached the Queen's Hall, its towering doors guarded by soldiers in obsidian-studded armor. Silas paused, turning to her with unreadable eyes. "One more thing," he said quietly. "Do not lie to her. Queen Marianne can smell falsehood like blood on snow." Astray nodded, though her stomach twisted with fear. Silas opened the doors with a low groan of ancient hinges. Inside, the Queen stood alone beneath a stained glass window of the moon goddess, waiting like judgment given form. Queen Marianne Arctelion did not speak at first. She simply studied Astray, her emerald eyes cool and unsettlingly calm, as though she were examining a rare creature, rather than a girl trembling beneath her gaze. Light from the stained glass window spilled across the marble floor in fractured blues and silvers, casting Astray in shifting colors that made her feel exposed, transparent. "Approach," the Queen commanded. Her voice was gentle, but the kind of gentle that could slice through bone. Astray forced her feet to move, each step echoing through the vast hall until she stood only a few paces away from the throne. Marianne circled her slowly, hands clasped behind her back, her embroidered gown whispering across the floor. "You shifted with the force of an alpha," the Queen murmured. "Yet no record of your lineage suggests such strength. Your father was a commoner. Your mother, a mystery." Astray's breath caught. Marianne's steps stopped behind her. "Tell me, child," the Queen whispered near her ear. "Did Saren Draycliffe ever speak to you of the night you were born?" Astray froze. Her mother had avoided that topic her entire life. Before Astray could respond, the queen moved to face her, eyes burning with knowledge. Because I was there. Astray didn't breathe for several seconds. The queen's words hung in the air between them like a blade suspended by a thread. She had been there? No one had ever spoken of Astray's birth with anything but silence and discomfort. The idea that Queen Marianne herself, ruler of Arctellon, the woman feared for her cold precision, had stood over her as a newborn shook Astray to her core. Your mother begged for secrecy, the queen continued, stepping closer until Astray could smell the cold moon-lily perfume that always clung to her. She hid the truth from the kingdom, from your father, even from you. Astray's throat tightened. What truth? She whispered. But Marianne only studied her with an expression too complicated to read, something between pity and fear. The Queen of Arctellon did not fear easily, and seeing it now carved a deeper dread into Astray than exile ever had. Before the queen could answer, the double doors burst open. Riven strode into the hall, breath sharp, training leathers marked with dust and sweat. Without bowing, without waiting for permission, he crossed the room to stand between Astray and the throne. Mother, he said, voice low with a warning Astray didn't understand. You promised you wouldn't question her alone. Marianne raised a brow. You doubt my intentions? I doubt your restraint, he replied, and Astray felt her heart twist at the tension between them. Two forces of the same bloodline, at war beneath the surface. Queen Marianne's gaze flicked to Astray, then back to her son. She deserves to know what she is. Riven's jaw clenched. Not like this, and not from someone who already fears the answer. Astray stared at them both, frustration curling in her stomach. Someone tell me, she demanded softly. What am I? Marianne stepped down from the dais, her gown trailing like a dark tide behind her. Very well, she said. Then hear it clearly. You were born during the night of silver convergence, a night that occurs once every 1,000 years, when the moon aligns with the veil. Astray blinked. The night of silver convergence was a myth told to children, a story of magic so unstable it cracked open the boundary between worlds. That night, Marianne continued, Seren Draycliffe arrived at the palace in labor, claiming she had been attacked by something that did not belong to this realm, something that followed her from the forest beyond the veil. Astray's blood chilled. Her mother had always forbidden her from going near that forest. Always. She gave birth to you with a spirit mark blazing across her skin, Marianne said, eyes narrowing. And when you opened your eyes for the first time, every wolf in the palace bowed, just as they did last night. Astray stumbled back a step. Her hands trembled as she tried to grasp the impossibility of it. That's not real, she whispered. It can't be. I was ordinary. I couldn't even shift. Riven stepped closer, softening his voice. Your wolf wasn't sleeping, he said. She was locked. Astray looked up sharply. Locked by who? Marianne answered before he could. By your mother. Astray's breath caught painfully. The room felt too small, too cold. Seren Draycliffe, her gentle, protective mother, had locked away her wolf? Why? Astray demanded, voice cracking. Marianne's expression turned grim. Because she feared what you would become, and because she knew the kingdom would tear you apart if they learned the truth too soon. Astray pressed a hand to her chest, where heat still pulsed faintly beneath her skin. What truth? She whispered again. Marianne stepped closer, lowering her voice. You are not merely wolf-born, Astray, she said. You are something this kingdom has not seen in over a millennium. Something the prophecies warned us would return. Riven's eyes darkened with worry, but he didn't interrupt. The queen's next words fell like thunder. You are moon-bound, a wolf born under the veil's touch. Your power is older than the crown, older than our bloodline, older than the kingdom itself. Astray's knees nearly gave out. Moonbound. a myth so feared that mothers whispered it to keep children from wandering out at night, a creature blessed and cursed in equal measure. Your mother hid you to protect you, Marianne finished softly. And now, the entire kingdom knows you exist. Astray felt the world tilt beneath her. She was no longer powerless, but the price of power had just begun to reveal itself. Astray followed Riven out of the Queen's hall, her pulse thrumming with a mix of disbelief and dread as the massive doors shut behind them. The corridor felt colder now, heavier, as though the palace itself knew secrets she wasn't ready to learn. Riven walked beside her in tense silence, jaw clenched, eyes forward. She could tell he was struggling to choose his words, but she wasn't ready to be coddled. "Why didn't you tell me you knew?" she asked, her voice quiet but sharp. Riven slowed, exhaling through his nose. "Because it wasn't my truth to give," he said. "And because knowing what you are doesn't make your life easier. It makes you a target." Astray swallowed hard, wishing the ground would stop tilting beneath her. Moonbound. The word echoed like a heartbeat made of thunder. She had wanted answers for so long, and now every answer only opened a darker door. They reached a balcony overlooking the palace training grounds. Sunlight spilled across the stone, catching on the silver dust left behind from last night's shift. Evidence of what she had become. Astray gripped the railing, knuckles white. "My mother locked my wolf," she murmured. "She knew what I was, and never told me." There was ache in that thought, something raw and tender that made her chest tighten. Riven hesitated beside her, his expression softening. "Seren wasn't trying to hurt you," he said. "She was trying to keep you alive." Astray shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. "Alive? Yes. But I've never felt alive. I thought something was broken inside me." Her voice cracked. "All this time, and she never trusted me with the truth." A rustle of movement drew Astray's attention to the courtyard below. Soldiers were gathered in tight formation, and at the center stood Advisor Fenric Holivar, his silver cloak rippling like a serpent's tongue. He spoke urgently to General Silas, gesturing toward the palace with sharp, agitated movements. Astray's stomach dropped. "He's talking about me," she whispered. Riven followed her gaze, his expression darkening instantly. "Fenric wants control," he muttered. "And someone like you, someone powerful and unpredictable, terrifies him. He will push for restrictions, surveillance, punishment, anything to make you look dangerous." Astray tore her eyes away from the scene, heart hammering. Her power had finally awakened, but the kingdom saw her as a threat, not a miracle. Riven stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You need to stay near me," he said. "The Queen is divided, the court is uneasy, and Fenric is already moving pieces you can't see." Astray stiffened at the words. "I don't need a guard," she murmured, though she knew it wasn't pride speaking. It was fear of becoming a burden. Riven shook his head. "This isn't protection," he said quietly. "It's alignment. If the court knows I stand with you, fewer will dare to move against you directly." Astray looked up at him, surprised. There was sincerity in his eyes, steady, unwavering, dangerous in its gentleness. It made something warm unfurl inside her, despite the chaos rising around them. Before she could speak, footsteps echoed from behind. Elira rushed toward them, breathless and pale. She clutched a sealed parchment, hands trembling. "Astray," she gasped. "This just arrived from Elder Marin. He says you're not safe here. He wants to meet you, immediately." Astray felt the world shift again, a familiar spark of fear and possibility igniting in her chest. Elder Marin was ancient, powerful, and rumored to know truths others feared to speak aloud. If he was sending warnings, then something far greater than the court's suspicion was unfolding. Astray tightened her grip on the railing, then met Riven's gaze. "Then we go," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. If the kingdom wants to fear me, they should at least fear the truth. The forest surrounding Elder Marin's dwelling felt older than the kingdom itself, its twisted roots and towering pines whispering secrets Astray wished she could understand. She walked between Riven and Elira, every sense sharpened since her awakening. She could smell damp moss, hear the distant snap of branches under unseen footsteps, and feel a strange pull guiding her deeper into the woods, as though something ancient recognized her. Riven kept a protective distance, scanning the shadows with quiet intensity, but Astray sensed the truth. He wasn't guarding her from the forest. He was guarding the forest from her. The thought sent a cold shiver down her spine. Elira squeezed her hand as they approached a crooked stone cottage, half swallowed by vines. "Elder Marin doesn't summon people," Elira whispered. "People summon him." The door creaked open before they knocked. "Come," a gravelly voice called. "You've finally arrived, Moonbound." Inside, the cottage smelled of herbs, old magic, and something metallic Astray couldn't name. Elder Marin stood hunched over a wooden table, his long silver hair braided with bones and feathers that swayed with each movement. His eyes, pale and clouded, were strangely focused as they locked onto Astray, like he saw something around her, not just her. "You shifted with the Veil's fire," he murmured, circling her the way a scholar might circle a familiar myth. "I heard it in my dreams, felt it in my bones. The prophecy has begun breathing again." Astray swallowed, unsure whether he meant it as a blessing or a warning. "I didn't choose any of this," she whispered, voice trembling. "I didn't even know who I was." Marin scoffed. "Power rarely waits for permission." He tapped the table sharply, and the wooden surface rippled like disturbed water. Images surfaced, wolves bowing, moonlight splitting open, a baby crying with silver glowing eyes. Astray's stomach flipped as she recognized the scene described by Queen Marianne. And then she saw something she'd never been told. Her mother, Seren, standing with blood on her hands, shielding the newborn Astray from a monstrous shadow-like creature looming behind them. Its red eyes glowed with hunger. Astray's breath caught. "What is that?" she whispered. Marin's voice lowered. "A rift born, a creature born where the veil tears. It followed your mother the night you were born, and it never truly left this realm." Astray's veins turned to ice. Her mother had fought that alone. And it was still out there. Riven stepped forward, tension coiling through his frame. "Why warn us now, Elder?" he asked. Marin lifted a trembling hand and touched Astray's shoulder with surprising reverence. "Because her awakening will call it again. Moonbound are magnets to what should never breathe our air. And if the Riftborn finds her before she learns control..." His sentence trailed off, but the unfinished threat hung in the air like a blade. Astray felt her knees weaken. She had barely accepted her wolf. Now she had to accept she was hunted by something born of nightmares. "Teach me," Astray said suddenly, surprising even herself. "If danger is coming, I won't run. I refuse to be powerless again." Marin's lips curled into a shadowed smile. "Good. Courage sharpens power. Fear only feeds the rift." Before he could continue, a violent crash shook the cottage, branches snapping, birds scattering, the air splitting with a guttural roar that did not belong to any wolf or beast she'd ever heard. Riven grabbed Astray's wrist, pulling her back. Elira gasped, stumbling behind them as the walls trembled. Marin's eyes widened, the first hint of fear flickering across his ancient face. "It's too soon," he whispered. "It shouldn't have found you yet." The roar came again, closer, shaking dust from the rafters. Astray's pulse thundered, her newly awakened wolf rising inside her, not with panic, but with fury. She stepped toward the door as glowing cracks of light flickered beneath her skin, instinct burning through her. "Astray, wait!" Riven shouted. But she already knew. The Riftborn had come for her, and she would not meet it as the powerless girl she once was. She would meet it as what she was born to be. The forest exploded with chaos as Astray burst from the cottage, the air quivering around her with a silvery glow that spilled from her skin like wildfire. The Riftborn emerged from the shadows in a violent rush, taller than any wolf, shaped like torn smoke and bone, its claws dragging trenches in the earth. Its red eyes locked onto Astray instantly, pupils narrowing like it recognized her, or hungered for her. Riven sprinted after her, sword drawn, but Astray barely heard him. Her instincts roared louder than his voice. The creature lunged with a guttural snarl that rattled the leaves off nearby branches. Astray didn't think. She shifted mid-step, bones reshaping in a burst of moonlit fire. Her wolf hit the ground with a growl that shook birds from the treetops. The impact of their collision sent a shockwave across the clearing, scattering debris and plunging the forest into a frenzy of snapping branches and flying earth. Riven skidded to a halt, stunned by the raw violence of the clash. The Riftborn slammed Astray against a fallen tree, claws raking sparks across her silver-touched fur. Pain flashed through her ribs, but her wolf surged with fury, snapping at the creature's throat, forcing it back several paces. Elder Marin hobbled from the cottage, chanting ancient words that twisted the air with blue spirals of energy. Elira clutched the doorway, trembling, shouting Astray's name. Astray didn't look back. Couldn't. Her world narrowed to teeth, shadows, and survival. The creature swiped at her again, its limbs stretching unnaturally, as if stitched from smoke. She ducked beneath its strike and leapt upward, slamming her full weight into its chest. It screamed, a hollow, chilling sound that vibrated through her bones like a curse. But the Riftborn recovered too fast, thrashing her aside into a mound of roots. Astray yelped, the impact rattling stars across her vision. Her wolf staggered, breath sharp, heart pounding with a strange blend of fear and defiance. The creature stalked toward her slowly now, savoring the advantage, its red gaze pulsing brighter with every step. Riven launched himself between them, blade igniting with silver runes Marin had cast moments before. He drove his sword into the Riftborn's arm. The creature shrieked, the wound smoking. It turned on Riven, striking with a force that sent him crashing into a tree. Astray's wolf snarled, rage igniting her veins. She lunged forward, but the creature's shadowy limbs whipped around, holding her at bay. She pushed harder, claws digging into the earth, her power flaring, brightening, burning. Then something shifted. Deep within Astray's chest, beneath fear and fury, a pulse awoke. Steady, ancient, calling to something beyond the veil. Her wolf felt it too. The Riftborn paused, sensing the change. Astray's fur began to glow, shifting from silver to a bright, blinding white, the same light she'd seen in Marin's visions. The forest grew silent around her. Even the wind stilled. Marin's voice cracked with awe. "Moonbound awakening!" The Riftborn lunged in desperation, claws aimed for her heart. But Astray didn't move back. She moved through the fear. Light burst from her in a violent wave, slamming into the creature with the force of a storm unleashed. The Riftborn screamed as its body fractured into shards of smoke, scattering into the air like ash thrown to the wind. When the light faded, Astray collapsed to the forest floor, shifting back into her human form with trembling limbs. The clearing was eerily quiet, the last traces of the creature dissolving among drifting shadows. Astray's breaths came in ragged gasps as she tried to steady herself, her whole body aching from the power she wasn't trained to wield. Riven pushed himself upright, stumbling toward her, his eyes wide with shock and something deeper, fear, awe, or maybe both. He dropped to his knees beside her and cupped her face gently. "Astray," he whispered, voice breaking. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" She shook her head weakly. Marin stepped forward, his expression grave despite the victory. She didn't destroy it, he said quietly. She only sent it back, and now that it has tasted her power, it will return stronger. Astray's heart sank. Her fight was far from over. It had only begun. Astray could barely stand by the time they reached the edge of the forest, her legs trembling from the overload of power she had unleashed. Riven slipped an arm around her waist, steadying her despite his own injuries. The moon was rising over the treetops, painting her skin with a pale glow she could feel pulsing beneath the surface, like something inside her refused to fully settle. Elira hurried ahead to open the palace gates, glancing back every few seconds with worry etched deep into her features. Everyone saw the light, she whispered as they passed through. They're talking. Some say you're blessed, others say cursed. Astray stiffened, feeling the weight of dozens of hidden eyes from windows and doorways. Before, the kingdom had ignored her. Now it watched her with a hunger she didn't understand. Riven squeezed her waist, grounding her. Ignore them, he murmured. They don't know what they're seeing. But the truth whispered through Astray's bones. Neither did she. Inside the palace, Elder Mayerin waited in a dim hallway lit by flickering candles. His expression was grim, the lines on his face deeper than before. Your power woke the old wards, he said, gesturing to the glowing runes carved along the walls. These symbols haven't stirred in centuries. Astray ran her fingertips over one of them, a spiral etched into the stone, and the rune flared brighter beneath her touch. She recoiled. Marin nodded. The palace recognizes you. That is good. He paused, then added, and dangerous. Riven stepped between them. Enough riddles, Elder. Tell us the truth. Marin inhaled slowly. Astray is not merely moonbound by birth. She is a conduit, a bridge between our world and the Veil. Her awakening will draw more than just the Riftborn. Astray's heart tightened. More? Marin's gaze sharpened. Yes. Worse. Riven cursed under his breath, pacing. Then we should warn the Queen before Fenric twists this into something else. But Marin shook his head. Marion already knows the old lore. What you should fear is not her, but those who stand behind her throne. Astray felt her stomach twist. You mean Fenric? The Elder's expression darkened like storm clouds rolling over the horizon. Holovar's bloodline once hunted moonbound for power. Old records claim they captured one centuries ago, tore them apart trying to understand their nature. Astray's breath left her in a sharp exhale. Riven immediately reached for her hand, protective fury flashing across his features. He won't touch her. Marin's eyes fixed on Astray. He already plans to. He felt the shift in the forest. He knows what she is now, and he will not allow something he cannot control to exist. Astray's knees nearly buckled, but she forced herself upright. She had spent her whole life shrinking, hiding, fearing she wasn't enough. Now the world feared she was too much. Riven stepped closer, his voice low. You're not facing this alone. His warmth steadied her, but it didn't silence the storm twisting inside her. The palace suddenly trembled, a subtle shake like a heartbeat beneath stone. Riven's grip tightened. What was that? Marin's eyes went wide with recognition. The wards are reacting again. Something is coming. Elira backed away, pressing a hand to her mouth. More of those creatures? Marin shook his head. No, something else. Something tied to her blood. Astray felt the same pull she had sensed in the forest, an invisible thread wrapping around her, tugging her deeper into fate she never chose. The candles flickered violently as a cold breeze swept through the hallway. The air thickened, heavy with a presence Astray couldn't name. Then, in the far shadows of the corridor, a faint shape flickered. A silhouette humanoid, but wrong. its form shifting like liquid silver caught between worlds. Astray's breath froze. Riven stepped in front of her instinctively, sword drawn. Marin's voice trembled for the first time. "Astray, that is not a creature. It is a messenger." The figure lifted its head, eyes glowing softly, not red like the Riftborn, but silver, ancient, and sorrowful. When it spoke, its voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. "Moonbound child, they are coming." Astray swallowed hard. "Who?" The messenger's glow dimmed, as if the answer itself carried weight. "The ones your mother died to hide you from." Astray's blood ran cold. She wasn't just being hunted. A war was coming, and she was at the center of it. The messenger's words echoed long after its silver form dissolved into mist, leaving only a chilling silence behind. Astray stood frozen, her pulse hammering in her ears as panic clawed at her lungs. "The ones your mother died to hide you from." She felt Riven's hand tighten around hers, grounding her before she fell into the spiral, threatening to swallow her whole. Marin leaned heavily on his staff, face pale. "I feared this," he murmured. "Moonbound are not only hunted by creatures of the Veil. There are beings, ancient ones, who seek to reclaim what they believe belongs to them." Astray forced herself to breathe. "My mother died protecting me from them," she whispered. "So why are they coming now?" Myron's eyes flickered with sorrow. "Because your power has awakened. And now, every world can feel it." Astray looked down at her hands, trembling with truth she wished she could unlearn. Riven stepped in front of her, his voice low and fierce. "Then we protect her. We prepare." But Marin shook his head slowly. "You do not understand. This is not a threat you can meet with blades, Prince." He touched the rune-lit wall, tracing symbols that glowed beneath his fingertips like breathing stars. "There are entities beyond the Veil, old, powerful, and prideful, who believe Moonbound were stolen from them at the dawn of the first convergence. They want Astray returned or destroyed." Astray felt the floor tilt beneath her, dizziness crashing over her like a wave. Elira moved to steady her, tears gathering in her eyes. "This isn't fair," Elira whispered. "She didn't ask for any of this." Astray let out a shaky breath. "Fair doesn't matter. They're coming, regardless." The truth wedged into her ribs like a blade she couldn't pull free. The palace began to buzz with unrest. Whispers slithered through the halls, rumors of lights in the forest, monsters at the borders, and a girl glowing like the moon itself. By the time Astray reached her chambers, a small crowd had already gathered, nobles and servants alike whispering her name with fear and fascination. Riven glared at them until they scattered like startled birds. Inside, Astray slumped against the wall, sliding to the floor. "I don't know how to fight something I can't even understand," she whispered. Riven knelt in front of her, taking her trembling hands between his. "Then we learn," he said softly. "Together." Astray met his gaze, seeing the promise burning there, loyalty, protectiveness, something warmer she didn't dare name. But before she could speak, Marin entered the room, closing the door behind him with a heavy sigh. "There is something you must see," he said. "Something your mother left behind." Marin set a small, carved wooden box on the table. Astray's breath hitched. She recognized the delicate pattern etched into its surface, Seren's handiwork. Her mother had carved that symbol into every lullaby charm she made. With trembling fingers, Astray opened the lid. Inside lay a folded letter and a crescent-shaped pendant made of moonstone so bright it seemed to glow from within. Astray unfolded the letter, her hands unsteady as her mother's familiar handwriting stared back at her. "My Astray," it began. "If you are reading this, then the secret I carried has found its way to you. Forgive me for the silence I wrapped around your childhood. It was the only protection I could offer." Astray's throat tightened. vision blurring as she continued. You are moonbound, born under a veilstorm. They will seek you. They will claim you. But you must remember what they fear most. Your freedom. Your choice. Your heart. These things make you stronger than prophecy. The room felt unbearably small. Astray pressed the letter to her chest, tears slipping down her cheeks. Maren watched her with softened eyes. Seren was one of the strongest souls I ever knew. She gave her life to delay what now approaches. Astray looked up, pain and resolve burning together in her gaze. Then I won't let her sacrifice be wasted. Riven rose, moving to her side. Tell us what we need to do. Maren tightened his grip on his staff. Prepare for a breach. The veil is thinning. And when it tears, the beings beyond it will come through. Astray lifted the moonstone pendant, feeling its warmth pulse against her palm. The air hummed around her, a quiet warning of the storm gathering on the horizon. Let them come, she whispered, voice steady. I won't run. Not this time. But deep inside, fear curled like a shadow, because bravery wasn't the same as readiness, and the night was far from over. The sky over Arctellon darkened long before sunset, clouds swirling in unnatural spirals as if stirred by invisible hands. Astray stood on the palace balcony, moonstone pendant clasped tight in her fist, feeling the veil thinning with every breath she took. The air buzzed like trembling glass. Below, the kingdom erupted in frantic preparation. Guards rallying, wards glowing, nobles fleeing to underground shelters. Riven joined her, armor strapped across his chest, silver markings burning along his sword. It's starting, he said quietly. Astray nodded, her heart heavy with dread and fierce resolve. Maren said they would come through the veil. Where? Riven lifted his eyes to the swirling sky. Everywhere. A sudden gust of icy wind slammed into them, carrying with it a low, vibrating hum that made Astray's bones ache. She stepped forward, breath sharp. They're here. And then the sky ripped open. Tear-like fractures spread across the clouds, glowing white and violet, as if lightning had been trapped inside them. The first figure emerged slowly, stepping out from the broken air as though descending from another world. Not a monster, no. Something far more terrifying. A tall, regal being with silver skin, eyes like molten moonlight, and hair that floated in weightless strands behind them. More shapes followed, each one unsettlingly beautiful, each one radiating a power that made the world feel small. The first being fixed their luminous gaze on Astray. Moon-bound child, they spoke, their voice reverberating through the kingdom. Return to us. Your bond to the veil belongs with your true kin. Astray's stomach twisted. These were the ones her mother had died to keep her from. I'm not yours, she said, her voice stronger than she felt. And I won't go with you. The being tilted their head slightly, almost sorrowfully. You misunderstand. You are not being invited. The beings descended like falling stars, landing across the courtyard with silent grace. Panic erupted among the guards as weapons were drawn, but the beings merely raised their hands, light flashing outward, freezing soldiers in place like statues carved from moonlight. Riven positioned himself in front of Astray, blade ready, but she pushed past him. This is my fight! He grabbed her wrist. Not alone, he hissed. Astray met his gaze, her chest aching with unspoken fear and something deeper. If they want me, they'll destroy anyone standing near me. I can't risk that. Riven shook his head, stepping even closer. If you fall, this kingdom falls with you. Don't ask me to stand aside. Before Astray could argue, the ground trembled violently. Cracks of violet light split the courtyard stones as a larger figure forced its way through the veil. Taller, darker, shifting with power that made even the other beings step back. Marin stumbled into the courtyard, eyes wide with horror. That one. That is their sovereign. The sovereign approached Astray slowly, each step making the world ripple as though reality itself feared to disobey. You were born of our storm, the sovereign said, voice deep as rolling thunder. Your power is ours by right. Do not make this painful. Astray's wolf rose inside her, bristling. My power is mine alone. The sovereign extended a hand, light swirling around his palm like a command. The moonstone pendant in Astray's grip pulsed violently, burning against her skin. Suddenly the light burst outward, blazing white, an echo of the power she'd unleashed against the Riftborn. The sovereign flinched, but only slightly. Ah, he murmured, your mother's spell still lingers. Astray's breath caught. Spell? Marin shouted from behind her. Astray, the pendant! Surin bound your power into it. Break it, and you'll be unsealed completely. Astray stared at the glowing stone. Full power. Full risk. Full truth. Her heart pounded. She looked at Riven, his face pale, eyes fierce. If I break this, she whispered, I don't know what I'll become. Riven stepped forward, cupping her face in both hands. Then become something that chooses us, not them. The sovereign raised his hand again, power building in a violent crescendo. The palace walls cracked, trees bent. The very air seemed to scream. Astray realized she had seconds, maybe less. Her mother had locked her power to protect her, but protection had turned into danger, and danger now demanded a choice. With a final breath, Astray lifted the pendant and smashed it against the stone floor. Light exploded, white, silver, blue, swallowing the courtyard in a blinding storm. She felt her wolf howl inside her, merging with something deeper, older, more immense. Her bones shifted, her senses expanded, her heartbeat thundered like a celestial drum. When the light finally faded, Astray stood at the center, eyes glowing pure white, hair lifted by an unseen wind, power rippling from her like a tidal wave. The sovereign staggered back in disbelief. Impossible, he whispered. Astray's voice was calm, steady and filled with ancient echo. You wanted the moonbound, she said. Now face me. Astray stood tall in the shattered courtyard, the air trembling around her with the force of her unleashed power. Moonlight poured from her like a river, swirling in luminous currents that bent the shadows and made the very stones beneath her glow. The sovereign steadied himself, silver eyes widening with something Astray had never expected to see in a being so ancient. Fear. The other Veilborn stepped back instinctively, sensing the shift in balance. Riven remained just behind her, breath held tight, watching in awe as Astray became something more than wolf, more than moonbound, something destined. Return to us, the sovereign demanded, voice cracking the air like thunder. You belong to the Veil. Astray shook her head slowly, the power inside her steady and clear. I belong to myself. The sovereign's expression twisted. Then you choose death. Astray lifted her palm, silver flames curling around her fingers. No, I choose freedom. The battle erupted in a burst of light and sound. The sovereign hurled a spear of condensed moonlight, but Astray caught it with her bare hand, absorbing it into her skin like water sinking into sand. The Veilborn lunged together, their forms blurring like ripples in reality, but Astray moved faster. She shifted mid-motion, wolf and woman weaving together into something fluid and radiant. She struck the ground, sending ripples of power that flung the attackers back. One by one they charged, and one by one she deflected them, her light tearing through their illusions. But the sovereign was stronger. His power pressed against hers like a tidal wave, threatening to drown her. Astray's knees buckled as he unleashed a blast of energy that shook the entire courtyard. Riven rushed forward, blade raised, shouting her name, but Astray pushed him back with a wave of light that shielded him. "I have to finish this," she whispered, voice trembling but resolute. The Sovereign strode toward her through the settling dust. "You cannot stand alone against the Veil," he thundered. Astray rose, eyes blazing with white fire. "I am not alone." Her voice echoed with layers, her own, her wolf's, her mother's. The moonstone shards at her feet pulsed, responding to her call. Power rushed through her veins, brighter and more devastating than before. The Sovereign hesitated, sensing the shift too late. Astray slammed her palms together, releasing a shockwave of pure lunar force that burst outward in a blinding ring. The courtyard lit up like a sun igniting. The Veilborn screamed as the light struck them, ripping their forms apart and pulling them back toward the shattered sky above. The Sovereign fought against the pull, roaring with fury as the Veil dragged at him like a cosmic tide. Astray stepped closer, raising her voice over the storm. "My mother died protecting this world. I won't let you tear it apart." With one final surge of power, she thrust her hand forward, and the Sovereign was consumed by light. Silence fell as the last echo faded. The tear in the sky sealed shut with a soft, ringing hum, leaving the kingdom bathed in gentle moonlight. Astray staggered, her power dimming, her knees buckling beneath her. Riven caught her before she hit the ground, pulling her into his arms. "You did it," he whispered, voice thick with emotion. Astray blinked up at him, exhausted tears gathering in her eyes. "I don't feel like I won," she murmured. Marin approached slowly, leaning heavily on his staff. "Victory rarely feels like triumph," he said gently, "but you saved this kingdom, and yourself." Elira rushed to Astray's side, wrapping her arms around her. "Your mother would be so proud," she whispered, voice breaking. Astray closed her eyes, letting the warmth of her friends steady her tired soul. In the days that followed, the kingdom transformed. Where fear once lived, reverence now bloomed. The nobles who had once looked down on Astray now bowed with sincere respect. The queen herself summoned Astray to the throne room, not to question her, but to honor her. "Arctellon owes you its survival," Queen Marianne said, her voice softer than Astray had ever heard. "But more than that, you reminded this kingdom what courage looks like." She extended her hand. "Stand beside us. Guide us." Astray hesitated, glancing at Riven. His steady gaze held pride, not expectation. She took a slow breath. "I don't want a throne," she said softly. "I want a future where no child grows up afraid of who they are." The queen nodded. "Then that is what you will build." And so Astray chose, freely, finally, to become the voice her mother never could, the light the kingdom desperately needed. That night, Astray walked out onto the palace balcony, the moon hanging bright above her. Riven joined her quietly, slipping his hand into hers. "It's over," he murmured. Astray looked out at the peaceful kingdom, feeling her wolf settle inside her with a calm she had never known. "Not over," she corrected gently. "Just beginning." Riven smiled, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. "Whatever comes next," he said, "we face it together." Astray leaned into him, comforted by the truth in his voice. The veil no longer whispered threats. The shadows no longer hunted her. For the first time in her life, Astray felt whole, powerful not because prophecy demanded it, but because she chose to be. And as the moon bathed them in silver light, Astray Emberlyn, once powerless, once forgotten, stood tall, knowing she had rewritten her destiny, and the kingdom bowed not from fear, but from love, gratitude, and hope. If you made it to the end of this story, thank you. Now I want to hear from you. What part hit you the hardest? Was it Astray's first shift, her fight against the Veilborn, or the moment she finally claimed her destiny? Drop your favorite moment in the comments below, and tell me if you want a sequel, a prequel, or a whole new world next. Make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this video with someone who loves powerful storytelling. Until next time, keep your heart brave, your imagination wild, and your spirit unbreakable. I'll see you in the next story.